Game 3 was over early in LA. We'll discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Kings fans? It is Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we are also on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. Also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Well, the LA Kings were back in action, back home. Game 3 of their Stanley Cup playoff series against the Edmonton Oilers, having split the previous 2 games north of the border. Kings coming off a big overtime win in game number 2, hoping to take some momentum on the ice for game number 3, as again the series shifts to Los Angeles. As far as the starting lineup in this game for the LA Kings, it would be pretty much the exact same lineup that we would see from the previous game. Quentin Byfield, along with Adrian Kempe and Anze Kopitar centering that top line. Of course, the third line, the nice line, has stayed intact pretty much ever since Victor Arvidsson came back from injury. Philip Deneau centering with Arvidsson and Trevor Moore. The third line would be Pierre-Luc Dubois, Kevin Fiala, and Alex Laferriere. Carl Grundstrom, Blake Lizotte, and Trevor Lewis making up that fourth line. On defense, same pairs that we saw in the first 2 games, Mikey Anderson and Drew Doughty, Matt Roy and Vladislav Gavrikov, and Andreas Englund and Jordan Spence. And once again, it would be Cam Talbot starting in net for the Kings, with David Riddick serving as the backup. Well, the scoring in this one, it would be one-sided to start this game. And as you well know, if you've been watching this show or paying attention, that the first goal of the game so far has been a pretty good indication of how things have gone. Game 1, first goal went to Edmonton. Game 2 to LA. And those are the teams that went on to win those games. Well, in this one, the first goal would go to the Edmonton Oilers. Their leading goal scorer throughout the year, had over 50 goals in the regular season. Zach Hyman would get the Oilers on the board first. And unfortunately for the Kings, the Oilers were not done there. Leon Draisaitl, their big star, scores the second goal. And then on the power play, Connor McDavid would score. And that would be 3-0 Edmonton in the first period. I won't go so far as to say the game was over at that point, but obviously that was the exact opposite type of start that the Kings were looking for. And it didn't get much better from there. Drew Doughty would get the Kings on the board to start the second period to give them a little bit of hope. Crowd got back into it a little bit, and we were hoping the Kings would build some momentum off of that. It didn't happen. Evander Kane would basically cancel out that Drew Doughty goal, and it would be 4-1 after 2 periods. The third period was pretty much a farce. Lots of penalties called, just not a lot of real hockey action going on, frankly. The Oilers would score twice on 5-on-3 power play opportunities after a slew of penalties were called on the Kings. And the final score would be 6-1 in favor of the Edmonton Oilers. But this one was already over by that point, if we're going to be honest about it. As far as the game stats in this one, shots on goal favored the Oilers 40-28. Power play, 3 for 7 for Edmonton, while the Kings were 0 for 5. So special teams are one of the huge storylines in this series, and certainly it was in this game. Faceoffs favored Edmonton 31-30. Block shots favored the Oilers 18-11, and the hits favored the Kings 35-22. It was I was out there at Crypto.com Arena. I'm doing this show right afterwards, something that I usually don't do. But certainly when it's the Stanley Cup playoffs, then you're going to do things a little bit differently. It made no sense, as I said on our Thursday show, for me to recap two important games and squeeze it into one show, because game 4, of course, is coming up on Sunday. So doing a show right after the game, and I was hopeful that I'd be able to get on here, do a rare post-game show like this, and have a lot of good things to talk about. And unfortunately, that's just absolutely not the case. We do our little feature where we just have one word to describe the Kings game, and I would say the word is deflating. The definition of deflating is let the air out, to suddenly lose confidence or feel less important, collapse, or flatten. And I would say that the being there at Crypto.com Arena with the fans, it was very deflating. That first period was deflating. I would say the game was pretty competitive for about the first 10 minutes. And then after that, it was all Edmonton. Second period was a little bit better for the Kings. But, when you're down 3-0, having an even period and trading a goal with the other team, it's not going to exactly work out. The third period was a gong show. Just the, ridiculous amount of penalties called. We'll talk more about the officiating a little bit later, but the game was pretty much over after the third period. So, you look at this game as opposed to what happened in game 1 and what happened in game 2. I don't know that the pace of the game was as one-sided as it was in game 1. But certainly things got away from the Kings late in that period. And then there was the power play plays a part in that as well. The Kings wanted to stay out of the box. That didn't happen. Drew Doughty had a tough first period for the Kings. And it's tough when, one of your veterans that you rely on to, be one of the rocks of your team has a difficult time. He turned the puck over, which led to the Hyman goal. That was the first goal of the game. And then he took a penalty that led to the third goal that Connor McDavid scored. So a real tough opening period for Drew Doughty. We know he's better than that. He's a Hall of Fame defenseman, but facts are facts. He had a terrible first period, and that was part of the story for the Kings losing this. And when it's one of your veteran guys that you rely on doing stuff like that, that's tough to overcome. I do think there was one kind of overall observation, especially from that first period, that kind of, was kind of a theme, I guess, is that the Oilers seem to have more things going towards the net. The Kings more kind of on the perimeter. And that's got to change. And that's, if you look at the Oilers, they're, have the more high-end talent with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. You almost would think that they would be the ones who would kind of be around the perimeter, getting shots off. And the Kings, kind of more of a blue-collar team, need to be more of the going to the net type of situation, whether it's shots going to the net, or more importantly, I think players going to the net along with the puck and making things happen that way. But that just wasn't the case for the Kings, unfortunately, in this game. I know that there were cries after game 1 to make a goalie change. There were even cries after game 2 to make a goalie change. And I think they're there again. And I'm just still not there. Now, I will say last year, the same thing was happened with Phoenix Copley. And there were Kings fans saying, we need to give Copley a try. We need to change things up. And I was always saying, I don't think it's the goaltending. I think Jonas Korpisalo is good enough. But I also understand when the series is over and your season comes to an end, you kind of want to feel like you've used all your bullets, or you've used all your options. So from that sense, I get it, but I still don't think it's necessarily a Cam Talbot problem. Now, he allowed 6 goals on 40 shots in the game 1 loss, or excuse me, the game 3 loss. In the 2 games the Kings have lost, he's allowed 12 goals on 84 shots. So I get from an optics standpoint, it doesn't look that good. But again, I think to me, it comes down to the Kings as a team. If the Kings play well in front of Cam Talbot, the Kings have a shot to win. They played well in front of him in game 2. They won the game. In games 1 and 3, they didn't play well in front of him and they didn't win. So to me, look, you could, if you go to David Rittich because you feel like you want to give Edmonton a different look at things, that's fine. I'm not going to put too much of a fuss over it. But again, I don't think it matters who's in net. I don't think that David Rittich is, frankly, that much better than Cam Talbot, if he's better at all. But to me, if you want to try it, that's fine. But again, the problem to me is not Cam Talbot. The problem is the Kings and how they play in front of him. If they play well in front of him, you got a chance to win. If they don't, they don't. So we'll see what head coach Jim Hiller decides to do. Certainly no indication afterwards. And I think that, frankly, that if you ask them about it, they would probably say some of the same things that I said. But it is certainly a talking point going forward. There's no doubt about it. I think I would save the David Riddick option for a potential game 5 in Edmonton to give the Oilers a different look if it doesn't go the Kings' way in game number 4. But we'll have to wait and see exactly what they decide to do. But like I said, I understand wanting to change things up. I understand wanting to give the Oilers a different look, perhaps. But I don't think it's a Cam Talbot problem. I think it's a team problem as far as the 2 losses for the Kings and the goals they've allowed and things like that. But we'll see. Special teams have not been special for the LA Kings. We will talk about that and more here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. When you are drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could also draft your business team and pick the best team for your business? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Indeed does the hard hiring work for you. With Indeed, you can start hiring fast, sponsor a job, and they'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description. Right when you post your job, they will start sending you qualified applicants. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for the quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. Continuing on with the LA Kings, now down 2-1 in the series against the Edmonton Oilers. Game 4 coming up Sunday in Los Angeles. One of the big storylines has been the LA Kings and their penalty kill and their special teams overall. And of course, taking bad penalties. So in this game against the Oilers, the Kings, as I mentioned, were 0 for 5 on the power play, while Edmonton was 3 for 7. So that pretty much speaks for itself. The third goal of the game was the Connor McDavid power play goal. That was certainly a key goal for Edmonton. So they continue to score in their wins, big goals with the man advantage. The third period, like I said, they had a couple of 5-on-3 power play opportunities, and they scored on both. And that's not a surprise when you know how effective their 5-on-4 power play is, much less give them a 5-on-3. But like I said, the third period at that point was pretty much a joke with all the penalties that were being called, and the game just kind of got out of hand. I've talked about this before on a previous show when it comes after game 1. The hockey that I grew up with, you had to, practically murder someone to get a penalty called in the playoffs. I'm glad it's not that anymore, but to me, it's gone too far the other way, where they're calling everything things that have really no impact on what's going on the ice, and power play opportunities for everybody other than the Kings. Those power play opportunities can be key. They can change a series. And obviously, if you look at the power play between the Kings and the Oilers, it's incredibly one-sided. The Oilers are 50% on the power play in this series. They're 7 for 14. The Kings are 0 for 10. So there's your series pretty much right there. And it's been a huge part of it. So that didn't go the way of the Kings. It didn't go their way in game 1, didn't go their way in game 3. And the result was what the result was. There was a penalty on Andreas Englund in the third period. He had a big hit on Evander Kane. I thought that it was a penalty. Some people thought that was a clean hit. It was a hard hit, but the puck wasn't near Evander Kane. I didn't mind seeing it, frankly, to try and set a tone, try and shake things up. Probably should have done it in the second period. But anyway, the officiating. I think at some point, officials feel like a game is getting out of hand, and to try and get control of a game, they start calling penalties at every opportunity. And I guess that's what they did late in this game. It didn't really work. It just made things worse. I'm not blaming the officiating for the Kings' loss in any way. The Kings lost because the Oilers were better. But it just it kind of lent to the night. The night was a really disappointing night. It wasn't any fun all the way around, and just all the penalties, later in the game, it just got out of hand. All you need to know is Andrei Kopitar got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I don't know that he's ever had an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty in his career. And I mean, probably has, but you know what I'm saying? The point is, if Andrei Kopitar is getting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, then the officiating is kind of off the rails a little bit. Also, a focus, of course, going into this series is containing Connor McDavid. The Kings did not do it in game 1. He had 5 assists. The Kings did do it in game 2. He had 1 assist and really wasn't a factor. He was a factor in the first period in this one, not as much as he was in that game 1 loss, but he had the big power play goal that I thought was kind of the backbreaker for the Kings. And it wasn't much of a skilled play. The Kings have been giving that kind of down low opportunity to other players all year long, where if you get it at the side of the net, they're going to let you try and score and shoot it, and thinking that Cam Talbot or whoever the goalie is going to stop it, 99 times out of 100 or whatever. And to McDavid's credit, he's like, okay, I'll take those odds. I'll go to the net. And he just kind of poked it in past Cam Talbot for that power play goal. It was not he didn't pick his corner. He didn't bank it off the goalie's head, or something crazy. He just stuffed it in, went to the net hard with it, and found a way. So also in game 3, the Oilers stars showed up. I mean, like I said, it was pretty much over in the first period. You had Zach Hyman, their leading goal scorer, scores the first goal. Leon Draisaitl, he's Robin to McDavid's Batman, but he's still a superhero. And then Connor McDavid scores the third goal. So the Stars show up for Edmonton. Not quite the case, obviously, for LA. The only goal for the Kings came from Drew Doughty on a beautiful feed from Quentin Byfield. But that was it. Need more, obviously, from Kempe, who has been great in the first 2 games. Need more from guys like Victor Arvidsson and Kevin Fiala. And that just wasn't the case, unfortunately. As far as the quotes, sometimes I'll go to the game quotes and see what the coaches and the players had to say after this game. And it was pretty much exactly what you expected and pretty much exactly the truth, frankly. And that was, it's just one game. We got to come back in game 4, and that's all that matters. And that's exactly what they said after game 1. And that's exactly what the Kings did after game 1. So again, when you lose games kind of ugly, it's easy to make them bigger than what they are. And look, maybe those games are bigger. When the series is all said and done, that's when we'll be able to determine it. But right now it's 2-1 Edmonton. That's it. It's not, 3-0. It's 2-1. The Kings are on home ice in game number 4. Just like in game number 2, I expect them to play a much better game. Certainly would like to have seen much better execution and effort in game number 3. But again, they know, they understand. I don't think what they're saying or what they did say after the game 3 loss is lip service. I think that's the truth. If the Kings play their way, they have a chance to win. If they don't, they don't. And that's what we've seen in games 1 and 3. The Kings did not play the way that they can play. They didn't get off to the starts they needed. They didn't get that first goal. And it was 2 lopsided wins for the Oilers in game 2, where they played the way that they needed to play. They stayed out of the box. They got that first goal. They won the game. So they can certainly do that again, I believe, in game 4. But it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort. They're going to have to be a lot more physical. They're going to have to get on the forecheck, and use the home crowd. I thought the crowd at Crypto.com Arena was ready to go. They were excited. They were into it. And then when you're down 3-0 after the first period, that goes away. So get that first goal, get the crowd on your side, use that home ice advantage. And then guess what? You get a win, and it's a best of 3. It's all even at 2-2. So the opportunity's there for the Kings. I don't like the way they performed in game 1 and game 3 just as much as you do. But the reality is, win in game 4, and that's all that matters. It's all about the next game. That's what they were saying after this game, and they're exactly right. So we'll see. It's obviously a huge game. If they go down 3-1 and have to go to Edmonton, and after that, and have to win 3 in a row, that's going to be a tall order. So hopefully the Kings can get right in game number 4, get off to a better start, and we shall see what happens from there. It is a Kings fan feedback show. Got a lot of emails. We're going to try and touch on all the main topics as far as what you guys had to comment on. so far in this postseason. And then this past week, we'll do that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. I have a competitive side, and that's why I'm not in a real good mood right now because the Kings lost. But sometimes that competitive side can be also a lot of fun. And I have a lot of fun when I play Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded 150 million times. It is a great twist on Monopoly where you can play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations. You can build up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is playing with your friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. You can team up with your friends and from people all around the world in timed tournaments that earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, we got some emails to get to. We did get quite a few this week, and because we are obviously recapping a game, we don't have quite as much time to get into and read all the emails, but I do have the emails. I'm kind of going to touch on some of the main topics, so I hope you guys will at least appreciate that. And I do want to mention the Locked On LA Kings meetup is going to be on Sunday before Game 4. We are going to have it. This was at the request of a listener. It's going to be at Lucky Strike, the bowling alley. You don't have to go bowling, by the way. But it's right there at the LA Live area. It's across from Smash Burger. You go up an escalator, and it's right there. I went and checked it out today. Looked like a nice place. I've never been there before, so I figured we'd give it a try. So, again, on Sunday, if you want to join the Locked On LA Kings meetup, I'm going to be there about 4 o'clock. Once you go in to Lucky Strike, you kind of turn the corner, and then on your left, they have, like, for lack of a better word, some couches that you can kind of sit in and hang out at. So that's where I'll be hanging out at 4 p.m. coming up on Sunday before Game 4. So if you want to come out and say hi, we would love to meet up with you there at Lucky Strike, 4 p.m. on Sunday. All right, let's get to some of your emails. And again, these have been heavily edited, so we can squeeze in kind of the main topic so far. This first one comes from Scott in Simi Valley, as the Dogs are apparently unhappy with the Kings' performance in game number 4. And by the way, I apologize for our friend Austin Stanovich. We had an interview with him the other day, and he had his dog with him in the room. And the dog, I don't know what happened, but the dog got unhappy. He let out she let out a very loud bark. And I had a friend text me and say, that dog scared the poop out of me. So I apologize if the dog scared you guys. Apologize. I don't think my dogs are that scary. Anyway, Scott in Simi Valley wanted to chime in on Quentin Byfield, and he said he thought that Quentin might be tired with all the games he's been playing this year, and he had never played this many games before. That was his theory on why he kind of had slowed down at the end of the season. But I will say he's looked pretty good and pretty energetic so far this postseason. And he said if the Kings lose a short series, it could be a good thing for the team because that will mean that the Kings will have changes in the front office. And that, if that ends up happening, I hope it doesn't. But if it does end up happening, we'll certainly address that. And yes, that will be a big topic for the LA Kings. If they go out again in the first round against the Oilers, I would certainly agree with that. I think that big changes will be coming, that we'll see a GM change, but that's for the future. Right now, we're just focused on getting a win in game number 4. Edwin in Brea, who is a recreational goalie, continues to beat the drum for David Rittich, thinks that he is a better goaltender over Cam Talbot. So, Edwin, we'll see if Rittich gets in the game and is amazing, then we will bow down to you, knowing what you're talking about with the goaltending. But until then, like I said, I don't think it's a goalie problem. I don't think it's a Cam Talbot problem. I think it's how the Kings play in front of either goalie that's going to get it done. Ed in Temecula emailed again. If you remember, Ed had quit the show, was upset that I called for the firing of Todd McClellan, but apparently he's still listening and he's writing in. And he wasn't optimistic about the Kings' chances in this series, which I understand. But he said he thought the refs would favor the Oilers because the NHL wants them to advance because it would mean higher ratings. I don't know about that because they're a Canadian team and a Canadian market. So as far as U.S. ratings, I don't think that they would get as good a ratings as the LA Kings were, because I think people in the US are more interested in the US based teams. But I could be wrong. Certainly Edmonton has star power, and TV people believe that people want to tune in to see stars. And if that's the case, then maybe you're right. And certainly the I don't think the referees have, I think the Kings have been their own worst enemy when it comes to that. But the officiating has not been great, in the series. Game 3, it really kind of went off the rails. Gary in Orange checks in, and he wanted to say that, he wanted to ask, what is the long-term plans for Brandt Clarke and Samuel Fagemo? And he was of the opinion that he thought they should be with the NHL for the playoffs, that Brandt Clarke was better than Jordan Spence, and Samuel Fagemo was a better option than Carl Grundstrom. Well, certainly from an offensive creativity standpoint, that is probably true. But as I've said before, and I realize that hockey is about putting a puck in a net. That's ultimately what it is about. I think that, the Kings feel like Brandt Clarke is not ready for the defensive side of things, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs at this point in his career, and probably the same for Samuel Fagemo, that he does have scoring touch in the AHL. Does that translate into the NHL, especially if he's getting Carl Grundstrom type minutes, which are not much at all? So I think they feel like it's better for them to continue to develop in the AHL, play in the AHL playoffs, and work on their overall game. And then maybe we'll see those guys next year in the playoffs for the LA Kings. We got this from Rob in Westchester. He says that he was hopeful about the series against the Oilers, but he said he wasn't optimistic. And I think a lot of Kings fans probably were in that camp as well. He said he did believe, he thought Cam Talbot could get the job done. He said he hoped that Pierre-Luc Dubois would have a big playoffs. And he thought the Kings could win if they played the right way. And certainly we saw in game number 2 that when they play the right way, they do have a chance. So I would echo those sentiments. Noah checked in. He was the guy who was in Asia and then came back to SoCal, but apparently is moving to Vietnam. Anyway, he says it's not realistic for the Kings' penalty kill numbers in the regular season to translate into the playoffs, especially against a team like Edmonton, because in the regular season, you're playing teams that aren't as good as the Oilers, and the Oilers obviously night in and night out. And that's true, of course. Yeah, I don't think anyone expected the Kings' penalty kill numbers to be the same in the postseason as they were in the regular season for exactly the reason you stated. But I also think that everyone hoped the Kings' penalty kill would be better than it was a year ago against the Oilers. And so far, it's actually been worse, which is obviously not good. He also said, do I have any advice to help Kings fans fall asleep after a thrilling win? Because he emailed after the Andrei Kopitar overtime game winner. My wife said the same thing. She's like, I can't go to sleep now after watching that. I don't have any advice because frankly, I don't have that problem. I can sleep pretty much anywhere, anytime, which is a great asset when you work the horrible hours that I work and you have to sleep like during the day. It's not a problem for me. Our final note comes from Craig in Rancho Santa Margarita, where he says the Kings have got to be way more physical, got to deliver a lot more hits against the Oilers if they want to have a chance to get back in the series. And I know Jim Hiller, the head coach of the Kings, did say that after the game. One of the things he did say is that the Kings definitely have to get on the forecheck, which is part of being more physical as well, to try and get things done. I did want to say thank you to Ed in Orange and Raymond, who's in Parts Unknown, who both sent emails this week. Basically, kind emails thanking me for the show and appreciating the job that I have done this season and helping them to be better Kings fans. And so Ed and Orange and Raymond, really appreciate the kind words you guys passed along for that. So as we wrap up the show, one more reminder, going to be out at Lucky Strike on Sunday, 4 p.m. Show up anytime before the game. I'm going to be hanging out there if anybody wants to come by and say hi. Would love to meet up with you guys and hopefully get some good mojo going for game number 4. Obviously a huge game for the Kings to try and get back in this series against the Edmonton Oilers. It doesn't look good after the games 1 and 3, but hopefully they can come back and play more like they did in game 2, play the right way, have a chance to win, and give us all something to cheer about on Sunday. So for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Monday, we'll have an in-depth recap and analysis of game 4 between the Kings and Oilers. Tuesday, we will likely have a special guest to talk about game 4 and where the Kings are at that point in the series. Wednesday, we'll preview game 5. Thursday, recap that game. Hopefully have another special guest as well. and then hopefully be able to preview a Game 6 coming up next Friday in LA and have another Kings fan feedback show. Either way, whether the Kings are still alive in the Stanley Cup playoffs or not, we will have a Kings fan feedback show, as always, on Friday. If you would like to keep track of the show and communicate us and be a part of things on social media, you can follow us on X and Twitter. We are at Locked On LA Kings. Also on Instagram at Locked On LA Kings as well. Thanks for joining this special edition of Locked On LA Kings. I didn't even mention, you're probably wondering if you're watching on YouTube, why are you in this kind of weird location? Well, we have some friends staying with us in our house. So they're upstairs in the office/studio. And so I've been relegated down to the dining room table. So that's where I am with my laptop, and I've got the Kings flag in the background to have a little background, but that's the story behind that. Anyway, thank you as always. Thanks to everybody who emailed. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend. We hopefully will see some of you out there at Lucky Strike on Sunday. We'll definitely talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings go.